They say every story has two sides. In Sicily, there's only one, the side that survives long enough to tell it. My name is Saiid, though here they call me Happy, a cruel joke in a place where laughter is just another sound that dies in the street. This is not a confession, not a legend, not even a warning. It's just my story, the way it happened, the way I lived it, tangled with the Italian Mafia. If you came here looking for heroes or honor, you've stepped into the wrong tale. This is a story written in silence, soaked in fear, and told with the kind of smile only a dead man could understand. They called me Happy. Imagine that. A kid with salt still on his skin from the crossing, stepping onto the docks of Sicily with a bag that looked like it had survived 3 wars. And the first words I heard were laughter. Saiid, they said. It means happy. And just like that, the joke stuck. I didn't even have time to unpack before I became the punchline of an island where smiles were rarer than honest men. You see, Sicily doesn't do happy. Sicily does smoke, rot, and silence. The silence of doors that slam too quickly, of people who suddenly don't know their neighbor's name, of men with hands too clean for the work they claim to do. The Mafia isn't a storybook with grand ceremonies and blood oaths under candlelight. No. The Mafia is a draft that never ends, written in cigarette smoke and erased with bullets. I didn't come chasing that world. Who would? No one wakes up in Morocco thinking, you know what would really spice up my life? Dodging bullets for Italians who can't agree over pasta sauce. I came because Morocco was too small, too familiar. Sicily was close enough to be stupid, and I've always had a talent for bad ideas. The port smelled like old diesel and bad coffee. I took shifts moving crates, breaking my back for euros that barely bought me a stale sandwich. Some crates were heavier than they should have been. Some rattled with the sound of glass and secrets. You learn quick not to notice. Questions in Sicily don't get you answers. They get you funerals. And yet the Mafia noticed me. That's the trick. You don't join them. They join you. They watch. They study. They test. Can you keep your mouth shut when the police ask stupid questions? Can you look away when a man gets dragged behind a warehouse and doesn't come back out? Can you act like silence is your native language? Apparently I passed their test. Not because I was brave. Don't mistake me for that. I passed because stupidity and fear look the same from the outside. The first job was insultingly simple. Carry a bag. Point A to point B. No details, no questions. I didn't open it. I didn't want to know. But I'll tell you this. That bag smelled wrong. Like iron and sweat. And the way the man took it from me, with those cold hands and colder eyes, told me I had just delivered more than groceries. He looked at me, smiled thinly, and said, "The Moroccan doesn't tremble. Good, good." That was my promotion letter. Now don't imagine it like a movie. Forget the tuxedos, the long speeches about family and loyalty. It was nothing like that. Joining the Mafia feels less like stepping into a film and more like standing in line at the butcher. You know the knife is coming. You just don't know when it'll slice you. And that's the sarcasm of it all. They kept calling me Happy, every time it felt heavier. Happy carrying packages that leaked through brown paper. Happy standing guard in alleys that smelled like piss and secrets. Happy watching a man cry for his life through duct tape while I pretended to study the ground. If happiness is a joke, then Sicily laughed at me every day. The killings weren't operatic either. Don't let Hollywood fool you. No slow-motion deaths, no violins, no poetic last words. Most of it was clumsy, rushed. A knife in a side street while drunks stumbled past. A gunshot in a parked car while the radio still played love songs. The Mafia isn't art, it's accounting, and death is just subtraction. There was one man. They called him Il Professore, not because he was clever, but because he liked to explain murder as if it were algebra. He once leaned close to me and said, "Saiid, life is credit, death is collection. Simple." Then he laughed. The kind of laugh that makes you check your back for knives. I smiled, but inside, I wanted to choke him with his own cheap tie. You want to know about betrayal? Sicily was built on it. You'd drink coffee with a man one day, and here he'd vanish the next. Vanished is a polite word. It means the dirt kept him. You stop remembering names after a while. Safer that way. Easier to forget whose blood might be on your shoes. But sounds, those stay. Guns don't roar like in the movies. They cough. Short, ugly coughs that make the air itself sick. And after the cough comes silence. A silence thicker than death, because everyone pretends nothing happened. Why did I stay? Maybe because Sicily doesn't hand out exit tickets. Once you're in, you're furniture, and furniture doesn't decide where it belongs. One night, they stationed me outside a warehouse. Inside, Voices rose and screams echoed. I smoked 3 cigarettes in a row, my hands shaking so hard I nearly burned myself. When they emerged, silence followed them like dogs. One man asked, "You didn't hear anything, did you, Happy?" I shook my head. Of course I shook my head. That's survival in Sicily. Shake your head. Keep your mouth shut. Let silence do your talking. And here's the twisted irony. I wasn't even a killer. Not once. I never pulled a trigger, never swung a blade. I was the shadow. The errand boy. The one who fetched, carried, watched. But in Sicily, watching is the same as doing. Silence is guilt, and I wore it like a second skin. Weeks blurred. I forgot what normal life looked like. Streets became stages of suspicion. Cafes were dens of whispers. Even children seemed older than they should be, as if born knowing when to look away. Sicily doesn't raise kids. It raises witnesses. The bosses liked me for one reason. I wasn't Italian. To them, that made me reliable. Outsiders don't have uncles in rival clans. Outsiders don't get tangled in family feuds. Outsiders can vanish without drawing headlines. Useful and disposable. A mafia man's favorite combination. An older one, hair silver like cheap coins, told me once, "Happy, you'll never be one of us, but that's why you matter. People fear ghosts, and you're a ghost." He chuckled. I nodded. But in my head I thought, ghosts don't live forever. They just fade, and nobody gives them a grave. Every handshake itched. Every smile was a blade. My paranoia grew teeth. I started checking my back in mirrors, listening for footsteps that weren't there. But the sick joke, I adapted. That's the mafia's greatest trick. They make the abnormal normal. Gunshots became background noise. Disappearances became gossip. Bloodstains washed away with the same detergent as wine. And sometimes I caught myself enjoying it. The illusion of power, the money that slipped into my hands for doing almost nothing, the respect of men who'd slit your throat for the wrong glance. It was poison, but sweet enough to swallow. So yes, they called me happy. And maybe I was in a twisted way. Happy like a man who's already drowning but still laughs at the bubbles. Happy like someone who knows he's part of a story with only 2 endings. A cell or a coffin. And deep down, I knew. I wasn't just in Sicily anymore. Sicily was in me. They say fear keeps you alive. Maybe in most places that's true. In Sicily, fear doesn't keep you alive. It keeps you useful. And usefulness, in that world, is the only reason you're still breathing. I woke up every morning not wondering if I'd die. But how? A bullet, a knife, a car bomb parked under the wrong shade tree. There are worse ways, believe me. The Mafia is creative. They pride themselves on creativity, even if their ideas always end with a shovel and a quiet field. So I learned balance. Not courage. Don't mistake me for a hero. Just balance. Too brave and they think you're a threat. Too scared and they think you're dead weight. The sweet spot was right in the middle. Nervous enough to obey, calm enough to do the job without crying. And that's exactly where they kept me. I became an expert in silence. Silence when the police sniffed around asking questions they didn't want answers to. Silence when someone screamed inside a warehouse, the kind of scream that twists your stomach into knots. Silence when bosses fought over money like spoiled children, except their toys were guns and knives. Silence became my native language, but silence doesn't save you forever. Eventually, someone tests you. One day they told me to pick up a car. Just a car, they said. It was never just a car. I opened the door, and the smell hit me first. Sweat and fear. Then I saw him. A man tied up, duct tape across his mouth, lying flat on the back seat like discarded luggage. His eyes were wide, pleading, desperate. He looked at me as if I had the power to save him. I didn't. I drove. Wherever they told me. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Every red light felt like a spotlight. Every pedestrian a witness. The man in the back tried to scream through the tape, but it came out muffled, pathetic. I wanted to tell him to stop. Not because I cared, but because the sound made me feel like my chest was going to explode. We reached an olive grove outside Palermo. They pulled him out. He barely had time to struggle before a single bullet cut through the air. Quick, efficient, casual. The birds flew up, then settled back down as if nothing had happened. The Mafia kills like the rest of us smoke cigarettes. Out of habit. I stood there trying to look made of stone. Inside I was ice. Cold, paralyzed, cracking. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face staring at me from the back seat, begging me for a mercy I never gave. But the next morning, I still showed up for work. What else could I do? Sicily doesn't accept resignations. They like to joke, these men. Dark jokes, sharp as razors. One said, Happy, if you ever disappear, don't worry. We'll bury you with a smile. The table roared with laughter. I laughed too because that's what survival looked like. You laugh or you bleed. Paranoia became my companion. Phones? Never trusted. Walls? Too thin. Even family ties meant nothing here. One man told me, Saiid, in this world, your brother might love you, but money loves him more. I believed him. The line stuck to me like a scar. And then came the betrayals. Always betrayals. A boss who smiled one day was gone the next. Courtesy of his own nephew. A cousin sold out another for a handful of euros. A friend who once split his sandwich with me suddenly wouldn't meet my eyes. Days later, he vanished. One evening, in a back room of a cafe, I learned how cheap life really was. Smoke thick enough to choke a horse. Voices rising over debts and shipments. I sat in the corner, quiet, invisible, like always. Then a chair scraped. A pistol appeared. One man shot another across the table. Bang! Simple. His coffee spilled, mixing with blood, dripping onto the floor. Nobody screamed. Nobody moved. They just kept talking, stepping over the body like it was broken furniture. That was the moment I understood. In Sicily, death isn't an event. It's background noise. And me? I was becoming background noise too. The name Happy turned into a curse. Every time they used it, it was like a knife pressed against my ribs. I smiled outwardly, but inside I thought, maybe they keep me alive just for the irony. A Moroccan named Happy, surrounded by men who hadn't felt happiness in decades. I tried to convince myself I wasn't like them, that I was just a witness, just an errand boy. But then I remembered the olive grove, the screaming man in the back seat, the silence I chose over speaking, and I knew I was already one of them. Maybe not by blood, but by shadow. They liked me for one reason. I wasn't Italian. That made me convenient. I had no cousins in rival clans, no uncles with grudges. Outsiders don't bring family politics. Outsiders don't ask questions. Outsiders disappear quietly. One of the older men, silver hair greased back, told me once, Happy, you'll never be one of us. But that's why we need you. You're like a ghost. People fear ghosts. He smiled. I nodded because that's what I did best. But in my head I thought, ghosts don't last. They fade. And no one bothers to bury them. And here's the sick joke. You adapt. That's what scared me most. At first, the paranoia kept me awake. The blood made me gag. The screams dug under my skin. But slowly it became normal. You stop jumping at gunshots. You stop asking why someone disappeared. You stop caring when your shoes get splashed with something red that isn't wine. I adapted. I became what they wanted. Not Italian, not family, not truly Mafia, but something worse. A man who obeys without believing, who watches without interfering, who laughs at jokes about his own death. And some nights, I even enjoyed it. The power of walking down the street and knowing people looked away. The money in my pocket that came too easily. The respect of killers who whispered my name like I belonged. That's the poison of Sicily. You drink it without realizing. It doesn't kill you at once. It rots you slowly, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. So yes, they kept calling me Happy. And maybe, in a twisted sense, I was. Happy like a man chained to the bottom of the sea but still laughing at the bubbles. Happy like a man who knows he's trapped in a story with no ending. Because endings here are either concrete walls or a coffin in the dirt. And deep down, I realized I hadn't just entered Sicily. Sicily had entered me. And that's as much as I can tell you. For now, maybe tomorrow I'll still be here, maybe not. In Sicily, nothing is certain, except that the walls have ears and the ground is always hungry. My name is Saiid. They still call me Happy. But the truth? The joke's on me. The story isn't finished and neither am I. Not yet.